What's up, Buckeye fans? Welcome to our second ever episode of In the Dean's Office Live. I am Patrick Murphy. I'm here with Bill Kurelic. We are from Bucknuts and 24/7 Sports. We started this a couple weeks ago. We took a week off because I was out of town and Bill's scared to use his computer on his own. So we took a week off, but we're back, and this will be a regular occurrence as we head into what will be a busy recruiting summer for the Buckeyes. If you are watching this live, throw questions in the chat here. We are going to answer your questions throughout the show. This can be on Buckeye recruiting. It can be on Ohio State football, college football in general, college football recruiting in general. Whatever you have on your mind, we're here to answer it while we are, as Bill likes to say, in the Dean's office. So a couple other things. If you are watching this on YouTube, please give it a thumbs up, comments, all that always helps us. If you are watching this on other platforms or listening to it on other platforms, please give us a 5-star review and leave comments as well. Those are always helpful. And we currently have a promotion going on Bucknuts. If you are not a Bucknuts VIP subscriber, you can become one right now for 60% off the annual price. We're about to head into, as I said, a big time for Ohio State recruiting. It was the first official visit weekend, which we'll get into last weekend, and camps begin this week. So there is plenty that will be going up on Bucknuts, and the best way to stay up to date on everything Ohio State related, but especially recruiting, is to become a Bucknuts VIP member, 60% off for your price right now. Bill, how are we doing on this Monday afternoon?
We are doing well, and I did name in the dean's office, but Dave Biddle has to get the real credit, so to speak, if there is credit to give, as many years ago, he started calling me the dean. And so I did not make that one up at all. As my wife said, that just makes you sound old. So he made up two of the best names, I guess, nicknames. He created that one. And for Mark Porter, he created the Grand Poobah. So just had to get the record straight there.
Yeah. As I mentioned off the top, it's the start of a busy recruiting period for Ohio State. For people who don't follow recruiting maybe as closely as others, could you just give like a general description of what this month is going to be like for Ohio State and the coaching staff?
It will be very busy, to say the least. And for guys like you and I, it'll be crazy. You've got official visits every weekend, starting this past weekend. And then in between there, you've got 5 one-day camps and now 3 7-on-7 camps. So you've got official visits every weekend, plus 8 camps, and we will be at all of them, along with Mark Porter and Steve Hellwagon. So we will have these camps extremely well covered for Bucknuts, and then the official visit weekends like this past weekend. A lot of work for the Ohio State staff, a lot of work for the Bucknuts staff, but really, as far as the Ohio State staff goes, this is what the future is all about. Really, the next month or two will go a long, long way towards determining what Ohio State's roster is going to look at in the future, because you got to figure that they're going to have somewhere around 25 players in this recruiting class. So that's 1/4 of the roster approximately, and they're going to be hosting campers for the classes of 27 and 28. So that's going to be a big part of the future after this class of 2026. So really important month for Ohio State and Ohio State football in the future.
If you're an Ohio State coach, you can sleep in July before fall camp begins at the end of July, because this month is a crazy one. I won't say the coach's name, but I remember I was leaving the Woody Hayes Athletic Center last summer after the last camp. I think it was a 7-on-7 camp. And this coach was walking out at the same time. And I said, good work. Like, glad this period's done. And he said, boy, am I glad it's done. Because while I think they do enjoy, having these kids visit and camping, it's a lot. And I remember a few years ago when we were out there coming out of COVID, when they were doing 2 camps a day and whatnot. And boy, was that a mess out there. But fun stuff. Again, if you are joining us a little late here, feel free to throw questions in the chat. I see we already have some. If you're watching this live, we will get to as many of those as we can. We'd love to answer your questions. Ohio State recruiting, Ohio State football, college football, whatever you want to talk about. We're here to answer those questions. But before we do that, Bill, we have a couple we were going to address. You already talked about it a little bit, but this past weekend was the first official visit weekend. Who was on campus? Who should people know about? What was kind of some of the intel that came out of that?
Well, it was a big weekend, and they had some of the very top of the board guys at Ohio State this weekend, but the other guys are pretty important too. They may not be at the very top of the board, but they're very good players that Ohio State would like to have. But I already see some questions about top of the board type guys on the messages out there. One of them being Luke Waffle, the defensive edge guy out of New Jersey. And Ohio State did have a good weekend with him. It did go well. I would, I guess, hesitate to say that Ohio State came out of that as the clear-cut winner, because I think he's going to take at least one, if not most likely 2 more official visits. I've long felt that Ohio State and Penn State were probably the schools at the top for Luke Waffle. His visit this weekend didn't change, in my mind, Ohio State's status. Now, what will be interesting is he has Penn State next this coming weekend. His brother, Owen Waffle, is at Penn State. So I expect that he's going to have a good time there. Not necessarily overtake Ohio State, but I expect that Penn State will do a great job recruiting him this weekend. And then to me, the sleeper in this whole thing is the following weekend. Maybe not a lot of people are mentioning right now USC with him, but he has USC the weekend of June 13th to 15th. And USC is doing very well. They are putting together very, very good NIL packages for guys. And I think when Luke Waffle gets out there, providing he goes through with those visits, when he gets out there, I think they'll put together a great package for him too. So I think it's going to be very interesting, but I will agree that things did go well this past weekend for Luke Waffle in Ohio State.
There's another one while we're on the topic, Felix Oho, obviously a guy who was also on campus, I believe, this weekend. Updates on him we are being asked about.
Yeah, Felix is, he's the prototype offensive left tackle. And Ohio State's told him that. They've told him, you are a left tackle and you are going to have the potential, probably will be a great one in college. There is nobody left on the offensive line, or maybe you can make an argument almost anywhere on Ohio State's board that's higher than him to add to the class. Now, how did it go? It went well, but my vibe is right now that it's still going to be not impossible by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not going to be easy getting him to leave the state of Texas. And he has that visit yet to go. This coming weekend, he's going to go to Michigan. The following weekend, he's going to go to Texas, and then he will go to Oklahoma June 20th. So that's kind of a gauntlet that Ohio State has got to survive, so to speak. Michigan, say what you will about them, but they have done very well with offensive linemen and recruiting and developing offensive linemen. Oklahoma, again, that's, when you live in Texas, Oklahoma and Texas, that's like Ohio State and Michigan here in Ohio when it comes to football battles. So Ohio State getting through on top the gauntlet of Michigan, Texas, and Oklahoma the next 3 weekends won't be easy. Won't be impossible, but it won't be easy.
A big big test here in the first summer of the Tyler Bowen offensive line coaching era at Ohio State. Obviously, he's had a good start. We talked about some of that on the last podcast, but there are certainly some big names out there that at least are interested in Ohio State, and we'll see how he does. You mentioned a couple things in those questions, specifically with Luke Waffle, and you said his brother's at Penn State. How often do you find the family connection being a big factor for kids?
Well, I think it is a pretty big factor. But in this case, I think it's a factor, but I don't think it's enough to be the deciding factor at all. I think Luke is going to go with the choice that he feels is best for him. Not that his brother is there, but that making the choice is best for him. So I think, generally speaking, brothers, if they are coming out with, for instance, as twins, that they're most likely going to go to the same school. I can't name in my 38 years of doing this many, if in almost any situation where twin brothers that were being recruited by the same schools went to different schools. Now, somebody will probably think it's not one of those cases, but I can't think of anyone right offhand. On the other hand, if it's a brother, there's a year, 2 years, couple years difference in age. Yeah, I think that's a little more likely. And again, I think Luke is going to go where Luke feels is the best spot for him. And another thing, way, we were talking about before this, the offensive line and Felix. I think it's really interesting, and you've stood next to him. When you see some of these offensive linemen next to Tyler Bowen, it gives you an appreciation just how big a man Tyler Bowen is, because these guys coming out of high school are, if they're getting recruited by Ohio State, in most cases, they're 6'4" on up, and they're 290 pounds on up. And you see Tyler Bowen standing next to them in some of these pictures, some of them, and he dwarfs a few of them. So you probably can attest to Tyler Bowen is a big man.
Yeah, actually, I was talking to one of the guys at our Penn State site, and Tyler Bowen worked at Penn State not too long ago. And one of the things he told me about Tyler Bowen was, you will be impressed with how big he is. And the first day that Tyler Bowen walked out to do interviews with us, it was like, oh, he's every bit of 6'7". This was not a joke. He is a legit giant man, and gives that personality too. I think you can see, not that you need to be that big to coach offensive line. I think you have to be, have experience obviously with offensive linemen, whether you played it or whatnot. But Tyler Bowen, certainly they talk about the guys that impress getting off the bus. You want to have your most physically imposing guys get off the bus first, is kind of the way that the old saying goes. Tyler Bowen, in terms of the coaching staff, definitely a getting off the bus guy. He impresses as soon as you see him. Whatever position he was coaching, he's obviously coached more than just offensive line, but certainly when working with offensive linemen, you're right. I mean, even some of the guys on the team that last year, during spring practice, the guys that are returning, I mean, he was definitely able to hold his own out there as he demonstrated drills and whatnot, which I think could help. You also talked about
Tyler Bowen is a first coach off the bus guy.
Yes,
for sure.
Yeah, exactly. You also talked about that maybe some of these guys aren't the top of the board or the highest ranked guys. And it just sparked something in my mind. Again, another coach who's no longer at Ohio State, but was for a little while, that I was talking to one time before one of the camps. And he mentioned, look, maybe it's not the best day in terms of 5-star guys showing up, but oftentimes you find guys at these camps, and you can probably speak to this, Bill, that, okay, who is this kid? Why wasn't he on my radar before? Or even guys that maybe were on your radar that were, not rated as high by the recruiting services, but guys that either you've seen before or you've heard about. And you've got to fill out your roster, right? Not everybody on the Buckeyes roster is going to be a 5-star prospect, although I'm sure they would love that. But those guys, 4-star guys, obviously, but even some of these high 3-star guys that they bring in and they look at and say, okay, maybe he's not ready to go right now, but he's a guy we can work with. We think that that can be something. We've seen examples of it, really throughout Ohio State history since there's been recruiting rankings. I'm sure you could think of examples, Bill, of guys who have maybe not been at the top of the recruiting rankings, but turned out to be pretty good players.
Oh yeah. Whenever I talk, the first guy that comes to my mind is a guy from Pickerington, Ohio, Pat Elfline.
Yeah,
he was a pretty, I don't know, run of the mill, if I dare say that, 3-star offensive lineman in high school. And he turned out to be a really great player for Ohio State and go on to the NFL. So, and the guy that I think is going to do the same type of thing out of last year's class is BP Miller, the wide receiver, quarterback turned wide receiver that signed with Ohio State and is already there because he graduated early. BP Miller, I think, is going to be a really, really good player for Ohio State. And, it may turn out in 3 years I'm wrong, but I think there's a better chance that it's going to turn out in 3 years or 4 years. We're going to all know exactly who BP Miller is. And even those that didn't follow recruiting, Ohio State fans, they're going to know who BP Miller is.
We had a question from Billy Tuesday. Thoughts on Savion Hyder's visit? Obviously, the highly regarded running back who is being pursued by a lot of schools right now.
Yeah, I think it went well. How many Ohio State official visits don't go well?
That's a good point.
That is a number that we won't have to count long to find. But when you look at what his visits, he's got Ohio State that he had this past weekend. That was his first official visit. And we talk about a kind of a gauntlet to run. He's got Georgia this coming weekend. He's got Michigan June 13th, and then Tennessee June 20th. I think Ohio State can win that battle. But if you had to tell me right now, ask me for a sleeper right now, to me, the sleeper is Tennessee. They have the last visit, and they have shown that if they want somebody, they are not shy about paying the very top dollar. And I'm talking specifically about David Sanders out of the 2025 class. They showed that they had the wherewithal to do that if they want to do it. And I can see them wanting to do that with Savion Hyder. At Ohio State, generally speaking, and I'm not saying it's this way with Savion Hyder, but generally speaking, if the money number, the NIL package number is your bottom line, you're probably not going to end up at Ohio State. They will not absolutely break the bank for any one player. And that's why they're able to field such a good roster, which they did last year, which I think was proven to be the best roster in college football. They won it all. And I think they had the best roster in college football. They do a great job of retaining their players, and that costs a lot of money. But they retained a whole lot of guys, and many of whom people didn't think were going to stay for last season. And they retained so many of those guys, and it paid off. And then this year, they were a school that did not lose a single player during the spring transfer portal period. They didn't lose a single scholarship player. So I think they do a fantastic job of retaining their players, which I think is a very underrated thing in this day of the NIL.
I would add to that I don't think that there is one right way, I guess I should say, to build a roster. There are certainly wrong ways to do it, but I think if you went and looked at the national champions, we don't have a huge sample size in the NIL area, but even before, like, teams were able to find success doing things different ways, right? But the way that Ryan Day has done it, and you just mentioned it there, Bill, of not offering all of this money up front, and there are exceptions. Certain guys have definitely made money early on, but for the most part, they want guys to come in, and they want guys to earn it, and they want guys that want to do that, guys that want to earn what they're getting, as opposed to just having it being handed to them based on what they did in high school or what their rankings are. And I think you've seen the success of that. And obviously that culminated last year. But even the seasons prior, and I know you didn't get to where you wanted to go if you're Ohio State necessarily, and obviously the games against Michigan, whatnot. But this program has sustained success going from Urban Meyer to Ryan Day, who are different coaches who probably, if Urban Meyer were in the NIL era, he might have done things differently. But you just think of the programs that have gone from one successful head coach to the next guy and things have fallen apart quickly. Ohio State has been able to do that because Ryan Day is stuck with what he believes. And as I said, it proved to be successful this past season. And I think that will only help justify that going forward. We've got some more questions in here. Again, if you have more, feel free to throw them in the chat if you're watching this live. Eric Turnbill asks, does OSU, and how do you say this name, Bill? I don't want to butcher it.
I'm trying, Kari Wilder.
Kari Wilder. Okay, I wasn't sure.
I had to find the Eric Turnbull question because I was down a little farther. But yeah, does OSU see Kari Wilder as a defensive end, tackle, or combo player? They're recruiting him as a defensive end, edge type guy right now. And he did make an official visit this past weekend and absolutely is interested, not very interested in Ohio State at this point. But again, this was Kari Wilder's first time at Ohio State, and I feel like it went well. But that also was his first official visit. He's got UCLA, Notre Dame, and Washington to go in that order. So I think he's going to take some of those visits, in my opinion. And by the way, this weekend, I would not be surprised at all, I should say this week, if nobody on the list of the visitors from this past weekend makes a decision this week. I think virtually all of them, if not all of them, will take at least one more visit. But I had somebody tell me, it was at Ohio State yesterday, I had somebody tell me that don't be surprised if after this weekend, sometime next week, one or two of these guys make a decision to commit to Ohio State. Could take a little bit longer, but don't be surprised if that is to happen.
That makes sense. It's early in the process, right? I mean, we're just into June. This is, as you said, the first weekend of official visits. And I mean, I know if I were a high school recruit who had a pretty good idea of where I wanted to go, I think I would take advantage of these visits because you only get to do this process really once. I guess you can go in the transfer portal, but that's a whole different kind of recruiting. While we're on the topic of this coming week, I know that we talked about this last show, the list of guys that will be on campus for campus week probably will change and isn't set in stone at this point. But are there anyone that you expect to be here that fans should know about?
For this coming weekend, right?
For camp, sorry. On
Thursday. Camp, okay. Yeah, and anybody out there does not know, and there may be some that don't know, Ohio State's first camp is this Thursday, June 5th. It'll be a lot of Ohio guys. Their first camp typically attracts a lot of Ohioans, and the staff has been working, to get as many of those guys that they are interested in from the state of Ohio at camp, that first camp. And the next one is not till the following week after Thursday. They go through the official visits this weekend. And then on Monday is when it really gets crazy. June 9th is a camp, June 10th is a camp, and June 12th is a camp. So you've got 3 camps the following week. So that'll be very busy. And actually, if you add in a 7-on-7 camps, there's one of those next week too on June 11th. So total of 4 camps altogether, 3 one-day camps next week, and then 1 7-on-7 team camp. But as far as this weekend, or I should say, as far as this Thursday, a couple guys in particular that I'm interested in seeing again are 2 offensive linemen, Khalil Johnson from Cincinnati Taft, who Ohio State has offered a scholarship to, and then Alu Luau from Cincinnati Winton Woods. He's another offensive lineman. To see how those guys do, I think it'll be interesting watching them in person. So those are 2 guys in particular. And actually, there's a 3rd offensive lineman that I think from Ohio that'll be interesting to watch at that camp June 5th. That's Patrick O'Brien from Cincinnati Moeller. And he has some really solid offers. Not Ohio State yet, but some really solid offers.
And I think it's important to note, as you mentioned, guys that have offers, guys that don't. Like, these camps are a great opportunity for these guys to show they should have an offer, right? That maybe you haven't been seen by Ohio State yet. Maybe you have, and it just wasn't the best day when they came out to watch you or whatnot. So you get to work with these coaches. You get up close. I think it's really neat that they do this to allow, and again, we talked about it last show, not always Ohio State either. There's plenty of other coaches that are there from schools around the area that you may be able to get a scholarship offer from as well. We've seen that in the past plenty of times. Bill, a topic with the
Pat, do you have your car already programmed for all the driving you're going to be doing from your house to Ohio State for these camps over the next 2-3 weeks?
It is funny. I have an Apple Watch, and I don't know how this works, but it starts to pick up when you're going to the same place frequently. And I remember last year, as we got towards the end of camp, it was like 10-minute drive or whatever it was to the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. And I was like, oh, apparently I've been at the Woody Hayes enough that now my watch knows that's where I'm going when I get in the car at whatever time I have to leave. A topic that is certainly a conversation surrounding the current Buckeye team is defensive tackle and the depth there. And Grandpa Buck asks, who do you feel is the most likely defensive tackle Buckeyes land in 2026?
That could be my other nickname, actually, Grandpa. Now that I have 7 grandchildren, hard to believe. Although this gray hair shows, I guess, that I could have 7 grandchildren. But defensive tackle wise, if I had to pick somebody right now from this group, I think I would go with Pierre Dean out of North Carolina. He's a guy that Ohio State is recruiting as a kind of a defensive tackle, defensive end guy, can play both. Wouldn't be surprised if he grew into eventually a straight out defensive tackle. But right now, he's got it down to 3 schools: Ohio State, Georgia, and South Carolina. And as long as Ohio State's offer, package-wise, NIL and all that, is very competitive, I think it'll probably come down to Ohio State or Georgia. He is, in my opinion, one of the top defensive linemen in the country. He is from West Forsyth, Clemens West Forsyth High School in North Carolina. He's about 6'5", 255 right now, but I see him as a 6'5", 290-pounder by the time he gets a few years in college under his belt.
All right, we've got a few more, and then we will wrap this up. Bob Smith, Bill, asks, any updates on Mason Wilt from St. Clairsville?
Yeah, Mason, anybody that doesn't know out there, is a 2027 offensive tackle from St. Clairsville. And, he is a kid that I think has a lot of potential. Ohio State has not, to this point, offered him a scholarship. I do look for him to camp at Ohio State. I don't know exactly which date yet, but he's 6'5", pushing 300 pounds, and has some good offers already. Virginia Tech has an offer out to him, and we know that Tyler Bowen is from Virginia Tech. Yep. West Virginia has offered him, and then he has some MAC offers too. So I think he's the kind of kid that you kind of look for at a camp to say, all right, he's a 2027 offensive lineman with potential. Does he earn a scholarship offer at camp?
Another one from Mecca Hannah. What's going on with Champ Smith?
Well, Champ is still, I think, very much in play for Ohio State. He is out of the same school as Tarvos T.J. Alford that signed with Ohio State, the linebacker. And he's an offensive lineman from Vero Beach in Florida that Ohio State has been recruiting for a long time, and I mean a long time. He has made numerous visits to Ohio State. But interestingly enough, right now, the 2 official visits that he has been set for and made, actually, UCLA and Illinois. I think he's going to make an official visit to Ohio State, but he hasn't announced it yet. So that's kind of what we're waiting on. That would be the next step for him to get his official visit to Ohio State. scheduled and put out there for everyone to know about.
And then I thought this was an interesting question, Bill. Dan Holbrook asks, any idea approximately on how much OSU costs going into an official visit? I assume, and Dan, if you're still on with us, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm reading that as like, do you know what is the cost of an official visit to have a player come to campus?
Okay. Yeah. Boy, I've never really done a lot on that because that varies. Obviously, if you're a kid from California, it's going to cost Ohio State more. You get the flight is just longer. If you're a kid from Pickerington, Ohio, there's not a lot of transportation costs there for Ohio State. So I think that varies on who the player is. Now, once they get to Ohio State, their visits are varied. Ohio State does a great job of tailoring an official visit to a certain player. Like the one player may not do the exact same thing as another player. Now, the base parts of the official visit are the same. You have dinner with the coaches, you spend time with Ryan Day, your position coach. You have a player host and spend time with members of the team. I give it like Friday night. All of the recruits at Ohio State this past weekend on official visits, they had dinner on Friday night in Ohio Stadium up in the press box. And they were greeted or welcomed in by the Ohio State coaches who also brought their families with them. So it's kind of neat. The players all introduced themselves, the individual recruits, and then the coaches, of course, introduced themselves, to introduce their family and all. And then they had dinner. And I will say that I've had more recruits and their family members tell me that over the past year or two that nobody out there beats Ohio State when it comes to how good the food is on these official visits. So that I'm sure I don't know their budget on food for official visits, but if you're giving these kids the very best and their families best food out there, it's costing a little bit of money.
Well, I can say that, and I'm not one to complain about free food. There are others on the beat that will do that for me, and they know who they are. But the food that they serve us in the press box, not the same stuff that they are serving these kids, I imagine. And even the guys, once they're on campus, we've gotten every once in a while an opportunity to eat over at the Woody after we're out there for our interviews or practice or whatnot. And the food that they have there, it does a good job. It certainly does a good job. So I imagine the visit food is probably the best of the best, given what you're trying to accomplish there with these prospects. All right, Bill. Well, we started this a couple weeks ago. We're now 2 podcasts in with In the Dean's Office Live. So thank you. Thank all of you who tuned in, whether you watch this live or are listening to this on your podcast platform of choice. Again, please give us a thumbs up on subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on your podcast platforms, all of that. And again, we have a promotion going on Bucknuts right now. You can become a Bucknuts VIP member, which gets you not only all of our stuff, but the entire 24/7 Sports Network. I should have mentioned that earlier, for 60% off the annual price. So pretty good deal given this time of year.
Also, before we go, Pat, I should mention one other thing. Talking about Micah Smith, he is supposed to announce his decision this weekend. Now, does that mean that Ohio State or any other school is no longer totally in play for him? I wouldn't say that. TJ Alford committed to Ohio State in March last year. Then he took his official visits come June. He took a bunch of official visits come June and then ended up staying with his Ohio State commitment. So just because Micah Smith announces a decision, providing he goes through with his announcement this weekend, doesn't mean that he can't take other official visits this month or even in the season. So we'll see.
There we go. Good to get that in there. Appreciate that, Bill. All right. Thank you again. Thank you, Bill. This is fun. I'm glad we're doing this. We will be back. Should be about the same time next week. We're looking to try and get a routine on this. So tune in, and we'll answer more questions. Tell your friends. We're trying to spread the word of the new In the Dean's Office Live. So thanks again, Bill.
Great being with you, Pat, and we will be seeing you often starting on Thursday.
Oh yeah, we're just getting started here. We'll have plenty to talk about next week, I imagine.